Breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report. Presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Ross Brendel, doing a great job getting our show out of the air on this snowy Thursday in the Twin Cities. And Ross, the Vikings, who'd have thunk it, 12-2 heading to Seattle, and this gauntlet that I would call it of a final three games.
Do you think the Vikings put this 4 to 7 inches of snow in the Metro into the aura with their whiteout uniforms on Monday night when they improved to 12-2? Because I'm not, the way this season's gone, I'm not willing to rule out anything with the Minnesota Vikings right now. It is a gauntlet here down the stretch, Jeff, but what do they say? What's that quote about eating an elephant one bite at a time? So the first bite is Seattle.
That's exactly right. And that's what KOC's been saying all year. Got to go 1-0 this week, and it's a good strategy, and the players are buying into it, playing very well when they need to play well. It wasn't a great showing against the Bears on offense, we know that, and Sam Darnold more inaccurate than he's been in a long time, but made the plays in the second half he needed to. They got the two long drives for the touchdowns, and the defense playing excellent football throughout most of the game and shut the Bears out in the first half. And now they head to Seattle and face a Seahawks team that is in playoff mode right now. It's going to be a challenging game. These last three games, I think back, Ross, really to the beginning of the season, and I said from Jump Street that I thought those first 7 games with 5 playoff teams, if the Vikings could go 2-5 or 3-4 in that stretch, that they'd be in great shape, because I thought the middle of the season was the opportunity to really make hay and get on a roll. So what do? They start out 5-0. They have the 2 losses, but 5-2 was still a great position to be in. And then they go on a 7-game winning streak. I didn't think they'd sweep the Bears going into the season. The Bears were a much more ballyhooed team, and the fact that the Vikings swept them and the Bears were 4-2 at one time. So here we are, 12-2, tied for the best record in the league with Detroit and Philadelphia in the conference. And the fact that the Lions are so banged up now with 4 more major injuries in their loss to Buffalo the other day, I think that Detroit is catchable. But the thing that the Vikings have to guard against, don't look past Seattle, which I'm sure they're not. And then Green Bay is going to be a very tough game next week. That's going to be a tough matchup. The Vikings barely got by them in Lambeau. I think these last 3 games, very exciting, fun to have the team in contention this year, and in contention for not only the wild card spot they've already clinched, but the number 1 seed, the NFC North title. Everything's in play right now for this team.
Jeff, I think there's so much to unpack right there. First off, Seattle, it's a place the Vikings historically do not play well at. Welcome to the club. Plenty of teams don't play well.
5 straight losses they've had there.
In the last one, we thought they had it, and then they ended up losing late, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
That was in the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll era. We know that. And now Mike McDonald, the coach. But they have had trouble historically in Seattle, no doubt.
And then, Jeff, when you mention at Seattle, at home against Green Bay, at Detroit, I think any other time, to your point, talking about the beginning of the season, if you would have said the Vikings get out of that 2-1, you would say great. Well, the difference now is if they get out of it 2-1, that might put you in a wild card spot. Right now, if you run the table, maybe 2-1 wins you the division. It seems kind of inevitable that the division's going to come down to week 18. But if you want that number 1 seed, maybe you feel differently, Jeff, but I feel like it's a foregone conclusion to guarantee yourself that number 1 seed. You're going to have to run the table here, which then means what? 10 straight wins?
10 straight wins. Entering the playoffs at 15-2. That would be incredible. And
that would be something.
That would clinch Kevin O'Connell's Coach of the Year award, Sam Darnold Comeback Player of the Year, all the different things, Justin Jefferson First Team All-Pro, and so forth. Jonathan Grenard should be a Pro Bowl player, but a lot of things on the line, starting with Seattle this week. Not going to be an easy game. But what I also find interesting, Ross, is the Seahawks this year, 3-5 at home. And they got drilled by the Packers last week, 30-13. Now, we know Geno Smith went out of the game, and then it really went south for Seattle at that point. Sam Howell was terrible. Was sacked 4 times, threw an interception. He was awful. Geno also threw a pick in the game and was sacked 3 times. So the Packers sacked the Seahawks quarterback 7 times. That could set up well for the Vikings pass rush, which is going to have to be good because Seattle has 3 really good receivers. And the Vikings look like they're going to get Stephon Gilmore back. I think that's really key down the stretch here. But you talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's close to a 1,000-yard receiver. Metcalf is at about 840. These guys are dynamic players. And Tyler Lockett's older now, but he can still make plays. Got a couple good backs in Walker and Charbonnet. And the question for Seattle is that offensive line. If they can't protect Geno Smith, who looks like he's going to play with that, whatever it's an ankle or a knee injury, looks like he's going to play. He's been practicing. I think that if they can't protect him, that's the key for the Vikings, and to be able to run the ball. That Seattle's given up a lot of yards rushing. The Packers had 140 last week against them.
Yeah, I think if you're the Vikings, you never want to see, as a fan, maybe you want to see players getting injured. I know that's a weird thing to say, but you look at it and say, oh, that's really good that person's not playing. But for the overall health of the game, you want the best players playing. But from a Vikings perspective, maybe Geno being a bit slower, not having that mobility that he's used to, being able to scramble, you would like to think for the Vikings pass rushers, especially Jonathan Grenard, who you mentioned, just a tremendous signing he's been. You would like to think that is very advantageous for the Minnesota Vikings, and you would like to think that some of those things that Seattle is going to do to try and protect Geno Smith, Brian Flores and the Vikings are well aware of that. So it'll be interesting again to see what that chess game looks like for 3 hours on Sunday.
Yeah, they're definitely going to put the pressure on him. They'll throw blitzes at him, design blitzes or disguised blitzes. And I think that they're going to want to try to test Geno's mobility in this game. And he can run, but maybe he's not as apt to do that. We'll see. But I think that the one thing the Vikings have, as we've seen all year, they've got those waves of pass rushers, Grenard, Van Ginkel, Pat Jones. Dallas Turner is a guy who I thought would come on as the season went on. He had a great sack, great power move or speed rush last week on a first-round pick of the Bears, Darnell Wright. I think that Ward also can rush the passer. So they've got all these players. They've got good blitzers. Got to stop the run, and that's been an issue with Ivan Pace absent. He's supposed to get back for the Packer game. But I think this game sets up in a lot of good ways for the Vikings to be able to have a chance to get out of Seattle with a win and then set up those final 2 games. But let's hear from Kevin O'Connell in his press conference this week, and had an interesting comment about talking about the number 1 seed to the players.
I think it'll come, when we have an opportunity to do that, and we won't have an opportunity to do that probably until we have an opportunity to go 1-0 that week. So I think it'll be pretty easy for me to sequence that up, but easier said than done as far as the schedule. I mean, we've got some really tough opponents down the stretch here, and all teams that are very capable of competing well on into the postseason, and it's very important that we treat this game with the urgency that it deserves, because it's a really good team on the road fighting for their playoff life, and we're going to get their best shot. We got to make sure they get ours.
Yeah, Seattle sitting at 8-6, tied with the Rams for first place in the NFC West. Cardinals a game back, but Seattle has already swept Arizona. They're going to finish the season at LA against the Rams in Week 18, and the Rams did beat them the first time. So the Seahawks, this is really a critical game for them to try to stay even with LA at this point in time.
Yeah, where do you feel on the terminology must win? Because I don't think it's a technical must win for Seattle, but it's about as darn close as it could get, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably equivalent to the Vikings if you're talking about how important the game is. I think it's equally important for the Vikings to be able to stay in the hunt for the division title, for the number 1 seed. Also trying to stay 2 games ahead of the Packers, who have New Orleans this week. And the Vikings don't want to narrow that gap going into that Green Bay game next week and give the Packers a chance to catch them for the 5 seed. I think that if they don't catch Detroit for that 1st seed or 2nd seed and win the division, you want to be the 5 seed. You're going to get potentially, it could be Atlanta or Tampa Bay. I think Atlanta is about shot. Could be Tampa Bay. It could be Seattle again. It could be the Rams again. I'm not sure I want to see them in L.A. necessarily in a big game. But that's why that number 1 seed is so important. And all of a sudden, you're at home. Maybe you have the week off, get healthy, all those things that can happen.
Also, Jeff, I've talked about this before on other podcasts that I'm involved with. It's not just the Vikings, but any team. I don't like the odds of having to win 3 road playoff games to get to a Super Bowl. I don't like the odds, especially if they're all outdoors. So anything you can do, to me, the number 1 seed would be great. But even if you end up as the number 2 seed and you're thinking, okay, we'll get 2 home games before we potentially have to leave, assuming you win your games, I think you start with the division and anything on top is gravy if you can get that.
Yeah, it's really tough. And I remember back in 1987 when we had that great playoff run, we win in New Orleans in the wild card game. That was the lockout year, strike year, and that's why we ended up on the road in New Orleans, beat them, knocked off San Francisco, the number 1 seed. By the time we got to Washington, I think the team was kind of out of gas at that point. And it's really tough. When I went to the Super Bowl with the Titans, we did have 1 home game at, of course, the Music City Miracle, the famous wild card playoff game before we played Indianapolis and Jacksonville to get to the Super Bowl that year. So being at home in the playoffs is a much better formula. We know that. Sam Darnold talked this week about where the Vikings sit at this point in time.
Obviously, 2 days removed from playing, so I thought it was a great chance to be able to come out here and execute some of the stuff for Seattle. And obviously getting ready to play these guys. They fly around. They're really fun to watch on tape. They got a great scheme. You can tell they're really well coached. So another great challenge for us this week.
What's the biggest thing that you see from their pass rush specifically?
Yeah, they got a lot of good talent, a lot of guys that I know, a couple guys that I know from SC. So obviously you got Leonard Williams and Chenna are the guys that I'm talking about. But just a very talented group. And that obviously pops out on tape. Talented linebackers, talented in the back end. I mean, a really good defense. And again, like I said, just really looking forward to the opportunity.
So Sam talking about the Seahawks defense, a good defense, and talking about Leonard Williams in particular is a potential game wrecker for Seattle. He's their leading sacker with 7 sacks. He's got 12 tackles for loss. He's a Pro Bowl caliber player. Last week, the Packers held the Seahawks with no sacks in that game, so definitely did a better job than what some of the other teams have done in the past. But we're gonna see a little highlight of Leonard Williams in a few minutes and hear from some more Viking players. But first, let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. There are trucks, then there's the trucks, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your Select Minnesota GMC dealers. Stop by and choose from our wide selection of colors, models, and trim levels. Our friendly sales professionals are ready to work with you so you drive home happy with not just any deal, the deal. So come take a test drive today. We are professional-grade GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2024 GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your Select Minnesota GMC dealers today. Length of contract limited. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/25. And let's hear from some of the Viking players as they get ready for heading to a tough road venue. Usually, although, as I said, the Seahawks have lost a lot of home games this year, including to the Packers last week. Josh Mattel is talking about going to Seattle.
Both man, it's real. It's I would say second to us only in the league. In terms of just being able to cause havoc and that mental pressure of just having teams playing slow. Offense definitely has to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to communication and being able to talk through things or communicate things in a certain way. And defensively, we know we just can't let them get any chunk plays because then that's going to rattle up the whole stadium.
You start your preparation today. You guys have done this before. We're exactly sure who the quarterback's going to be. They're saying Geno Smith. You never really know. Maybe the first time a coach bent the truth about an injury, but do you have to prepare? Because they're two very different quarterbacks that they could throw at you.
I would say the offense stays the same. Obviously they can't switch up the whole offense just because one guy's down. Teams are built to plug and play. Play your same style of ball. Season's already deep in, so we're expecting the same thing with whatever guys out there. Obviously, we just know Geno's. He's the guy. He can make all the throws. He's a great quarterback. He's been playing lights out this year, so we're gonna have to step up in there when he plays. But we're ready for anything.
I think a couple keys this week, Ross. Win the turnover battle. The Vikings are +8, have a big edge. Seattle -5 in their turnover ratio. And Sam Darnold only 1 turnover in the last 5 games. That's been big. And that was on the 4th down desperation throw against the Bears. Running the ball is going to be really, I think, pivotal this week and key for the Vikings. And the fact that Seattle started the year very poorly against the run, got better for a long time, and then last week the Packers gashed them, Josh Jacobs and company, for 140 yards. So I'm sure that the Vikings are going to want to try to run Aaron Jones a lot. He's been protecting the ball better, running hard, and I think that's going to be a key if they can get he and Cam Akers going behind the offensive line. Keep Brian O'Neill healthy.
Yes.
That's a really, obviously, critical, essential player for the Vikings, and so we'll just see how that plays out. C.J. Ham this week talking about the Vikings running game.
I think it's pretty known in just the history of football to if you can run the ball well, you're going to win a lot of games. And if you can have a balanced offense, you're going to win a lot of games. And I think that's something that we emphasize this year, being able to run the ball when we need to. Adding Aaron, bringing back Cam, Ty, all those guys are pieces to that puzzle. And the O-line has been blocking the butts off. Tight ends been blocking the butts off all year, so it's been good.
Harrison Phillips, I thought, had some interesting comments this week. He was talking about all the different ways that the Vikings are winning games this year, and the fact that he thinks that makes them a very dangerous team come postseason, perhaps. That they do find ways to win. Some weeks it's the defense forcing turnovers. Some weeks it's the offense explosive, as they were against Atlanta. And here's Harrison Phillips talking about different ways to win games.
I think what's cool about our season this year is as a collective team, as Minnesota Vikings, we've won games a lot of different ways, right? We've won games from trailing at the half, from starting really fast, making teams one-dimensional. We've won games running the ball and limiting them running the ball. We've won games where we've given up a lot of yards and not been as great on offense, but still found ways to win the game. Special teams has helped us win games. I think that's to our strength. So at this point, I think if anything, we find out we're a resilient group. And yeah, defensively, we take the football away. We try to make teams one-dimensional and then let some of these elite athletes we have go attack the quarterback. But again, I think the biggest thing we've learned is that we can win in a lot of ways, and that's to our advantage.
I think one of the things they're going to have to do this week, too, Ross, cut down on the penalties. It was a little ugly on Monday night against the Bears, and the main culprit was Cam Robinson. He's played really well this year since the trade, but he had an awful night.
I think the Bears historically, with the defense that they have, they do that to a lot of teams, but it's more explainable maybe on the road than at home. So you hope that doesn't carry over into what we all expect will be a hostile environment. And to what you said earlier, Jeff, about being able to run the ball, I don't even think it's necessarily all about running the ball, but it's about being efficient on first down. If you're setting yourself up for second and long, third and long, that's not a place where that historically plays well. We know the Vikings are explosive, so maybe they can get away with it more than most. But I think Kevin O'Connell and the coaching staff would tell you they would prefer not to be sitting in second and third and long, especially on the road in Seattle.
Yeah, and that's where the penalties put them in a bad situation. The false starts, and all of a sudden it's 1st and 15 or 2nd and 15 or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think that's obviously a concern going in. Cam Robinson had 3 false starts, had 1 penalty for lining up too deep in the backfield. he's got to clean it up. And I think the offensive line as a whole, yeah, they scored 30 points in the game and came down the stretch and played well at the end. And when O'Neal came back in, but when he was out, it was shaky for a long time in that game. Part of the problem, of course, Justin Jefferson drops a touchdown pass, and that better not happen again. They're Jets, and I don't think it will. I think that he was, as he said, sickened by it.
the look of my hands have deceived me. I don't.
Yes.
You don't want it to happen, but it's nice when you see a player right away. I mean, he did the old "it's on me," right? I mean, so
yeah, he sure did. He knew that,
and you appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Mike McDonald is in his first year as the Seattle coach, and did a great job as the defensive coordinator of the Ravens for many years. And he was asked this week about covering the guy we just talked about, Justin Jefferson, and his sidekick, Jordan Addison.
That's a good question. We're working on those answers right now. Both. I mean, the whole receiving core, tight ends, back. I mean, it's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts type of thing on how it all works together. But those guys, they play all the positions, so you got to account for them in all the spots. Probably the most diverse route tree that we're going to get from a duo yet this year, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, because that's not easy to learn all the spots, learn all the routes, and then having the timing with the quarterback so you can still play on time. So easier said than done. Just two really dynamic players that we're going to have to account for. You can't double everybody all the time, so we're going to have singles, and our guys will be matched up, and let's go to work.
And that's music to Justin Jefferson's ears and Jordan Addison's to be in single coverage, because McDonald's going to send some blitzes. And one of the things we've seen where the Vikings have struggled in pass protection, some of those delayed blitzes by the linebackers. Seahawks have some good linebackers on that team.
But Sam's been good against the blitz all year.
Yeah,
he's been very good.
Yeah, and he's protecting the ball. He'll take a sack if he has to take a sack, throw it away if he has to take it. And I think that's what's changed in the last several weeks since that Jacksonville game. He's being much more careful with the ball, and that's definitely paying dividends and well down the road too. Let's look at a few highlights of the Seahawks and see some of what the Vikings will be dealing with this week. And the Packer game last week, not a great one for the Seattle Seahawks, getting beat 30-13 at home. Here was a play, nice touchdown grab by Romeo Doubs from Jordan Love.
As they have now won 4 of their last 5. Packers trying to do the same. 3rd and 5. Love putting it up top, back of the end zone. Oh, did Dobbs catch that? What a catch, Romeo Dobbs!
That was a terrific catch down, shoestring grab, as we say.
Literally looks like he picked it up off the ground. I watched that highlight about 3 times before I could definitively see that ball not touch the ground.
Exactly.
Great catch.
Great catch. That was a great catch. And I guess this could kind of serve as our Packer preview, too, for next week, because we're seeing Jordan Love and what he can do and what he's capable of. And we'll have plenty of talk next week in Viking Packer week about him and what he did in that second half of the last game against the Vikings. But Rashawn Gary got his 4th sack in the last 5 games in that game last week. As we said, the Packers got to Geno Smith and Sam Howell 7 times. Here's a sack by Rashawn Gary that the Vikings, I'm sure, are watching, because Gary is the Packers' best edge rusher.
Tyler Lockett in motion. Smith, pressured, brought down. Rashawn Gary, who's been hot of late. That's his 4th sack in the last 5 games.
And
can you dance like that, Jeff, for those watching on YouTube?
For sure.
Nice little sack dance from Gary.
We'd like to see Van Ginkel do that sack coming from the left side, and Grenard will be coming from the right side. I think that Geno's going to have his hands full this week in that offensive line. Can't give him time because he's got those really good receivers. And talking about those good receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba, the Ohio State grad, former number 1 pick. This guy is dangerous, and he's closing in on 1,000 yards this year, has 80-some catches. Here's a touchdown pass in the Cardinal game back in Week 14, a couple weeks ago, when the Seahawks beat the Cardinals 30-18 down in the desert.
Looking to take advantage. Ball is inside the 20. Smith deals. End zone. Open. Touchdown. Smith and Jigba with the score.
That's a nice throw by Geno. He had some time to do it. Here's one of my favorite plays this year, Ross. We were talking about before the show. Leonard Williams, the guy who we know the Vikings have to handle him in this game and be very wary of him where he is at all times. 7 sacks on the season, 12 tackles for loss. Here's, I think, the Seahawks defensive play of the year. The Vikings have several candidates, a couple of Grenard sacks in big games against the Bears, and also against Atlanta. Van Ginkel's 2 pick sixes going back earlier in the season. Here is Leonard Williams with a fantastic play against one of our old favorites, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and burning his old team in the process.
He
Jeff.
did.
Seahawks load the line and bring pressure. Rodgers has it picked off by Leonard Williams. Just the second interception of the Big Cat's career. And is he going to take it to the house? His old house. He sure is. A pick six. And he flips the game on a huge play.
It's just not fair watching a tackle try and chase down anybody that's not a defensive lineman.
No, exactly. That was just a huge play in that game. As you saw, the Seahawks were down 21-7 when he made that play, and the Jets are going in to score again, and that totally flipped that game. We're going to talk about what's going on around the league this week. Detroit goes to Chicago. Maybe the Bears can rise up. Almost knocked them off on Thanksgiving. Packers have the Saints. Some other big games around the league. But first, let's hear from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
There are trucks. Then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your local GMC dealer. Come take a test drive today and see for yourself. We are professional-grade. GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR for 36 months on GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your local GMC dealer today. Monthly payment is $28.16 for every $1,000 you finance. Average example down payment 15%. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/2/24.
Couple other keys, Ross, and then we're going to make our picks. I think the Vikings have to get off to a quick start, kind of quiet that crowd. I think they have an edge in the kicking game. Will Reichert looks like he's back in top form. Went 6 for 6 on his kicks last week, and Jason Myers has 3 missed field goals and 3 missed extra points this year. Okay, I'm going to let you go first. Give me your pick in the game.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will give you my pick. Historically, when it comes to the Vikings in Seattle, I am negative. I think the Vikings are going to find a way in this one. I'm not convinced it will be pretty. I think at times it could be awfully hairy, but I will take the Vikings to win. How about like 27-21? And I have to sneak this in there because I'm stealing Sam Bird's job today. Sam sent a note last night. I believe you may or may not have been on it. I think you were on it. He is kind of like-minded. He's going to take the Vikings in walk-off fashion from Big Leg Bill or Will the Thrill, whatever you want to call him, 31-30.
Yeah, I'm kind of right between you guys. I'm with you on the 27 number.
Okay.
And I had the Vikings 30 last week. I had them right on that number, too.
Good for you.
Yes, but I just think it's going to be, I think, a tougher game than some people think. And the Vikings are a 3-point favorite in the game. Going to Seattle, as we said, a place they've had trouble in the past. It's a dangerous game with a team fighting for their playoff life. I just think I like the Vikings' edge rushers in this game, pressuring Smith into some sacks and a couple interceptions. I think Aaron Jones can run the ball. I think set up play action for Sam Darnold to Jefferson and Addison and Hockenson. I like the Vikings. I'm going to call it 27-24, and I'm going to agree with Sam on a Will Reichert walk-off field goal.
You know, it's kind of it's always an odd way for an NFL game to end, right? For 3 hours, you have these Adonises beating the you-know-what out of each other. Then somebody like the size of you or I, Jeff, trots out to win a football game. But it's also very exciting.
Yeah,
so
it is.
If it's doesn't matter if it's a walk-off win or a win by 28, Jeff. You know what matters?
Get the W.
Get the W. You know that better than anybody.
Absolutely true. And in the NFC North this week, Detroit's at Chicago. As I said, the Lions injury-riddled, losing Aleem McNeil, their best defensive lineman with Hutchinson out, losing Carlton Davis, their best corner, with a fractured jaw. I don't think he'll make it back by the Viking game, may not make it back for the whole season. McNeil's out for the year with a knee, lost another corner, Dorsey. And as we said, David Montgomery, their starting running back. They've still got Jahmyr Gibbs, but that 1-2 punch is now gone with Montgomery hurt. I think it's kind of a trap game for Detroit. They have to be careful in this game. They go to San Francisco next week, the Vikings hope win their game against Miami this week to stay barely alive in the playoff hunt so that they can maybe play Detroit tough next week in San Francisco. But I've got Detroit winning. The Packers should breeze over the Saints. A couple other big games, Houston at Kansas City, and Pittsburgh at Baltimore on Saturday, with the AFC North potentially on the line if the Steelers can win and sweep the season series with the Ravens. I think the Ravens will win that one. I like Kansas City winning. They want to try to clinch this thing and get Patrick Mahomes some rest with that sprained ankle.
The NFL is always great, Jeff, but this time of year when it comes down to teams clinching divisions, playoff seeding, teams that are still engaged in playing spoiler, and then occasionally you have the teams that are no longer engaged and they're checked out. It's really fun to see how that all comes together, and we're going to start to get a really clear picture of this playoff picture as we go into Week 17. Things will start to make a bit more sense. But again, I go back to what I said maybe 20 minutes ago, Jeff. It just seems almost inevitable that the Vikings and Lions game will likely decide the division in Week 18. For it not, you basically need the Lions to lose the next two and the Vikings to win the next two.
Right.
And that doesn't seem super likely to me.
No, that's not going to happen. And I think for the Vikings, they've got to stay alive at this point.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why the Seattle game is so critical. And we will be back on Monday to break it all down and start to preview the Packer week. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. This is Jeff Diamond with Ross Brendel. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.